Ethan Miller was a millionaire who believed he had the world in his hands. Cold, arrogant, and obsessed with power, he treated his employees as disposable pieces. Among them was Natalie Brooks, a humble young woman he mercilessly humiliated in front of everyone. But what Ethan never imagined was that this very same woman he despised would be the one to save his life at the most unexpected moment. What happens when the pride of a powerful man collides with the dignity of someone who refuses to be broken? How long can a closed heart resist when confronted with truth, loyalty, and love? Subscribe to the channel now, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because this story will turn upside down everything you believe about power and humanity. Ethan Miller wasn't just a successful millionaire. He was the living portrait of corporate coldness, the kind of man who walked into a room and silence immediately followed. Not because he inspired respect, but because he spread fear. His fortune was built on discipline, strategy, and of course, a generous dose of insensitivity. And here's something interesting. How many times have you met someone who believes power is synonymous with humiliating others? In Ethan's world, people were seen as numbers on spreadsheets. If they didn't serve a purpose, they were cut without hesitation. It was as if he believed everyone was disposable, just pieces of a machine that only mattered while functioning. That may sound distant, but in reality it isn't. Perhaps you felt this in a job, when a boss treated you as if you were just another ID number in the crowd. And in this inflated ego scenario appeared Natalie Brooks. Unlike Ethan, she wasn't chasing power, status, or prestige. Her only goal was to work hard to support her sick mother and younger brother. Have you noticed how people like that carry a silent strength? They don't make headlines, but they are the true pillars holding society together. Natalie had a rare trait. Despite her struggles, she never stopped smiling at her coworkers. There was a dignity in her stance that even bothered the arrogant ones. Curious, isn't it? Because when someone stands firm in the middle of a storm, it becomes a mirror for those who, even having everything, can't find peace. Have you ever realized that often those with less carry the greatest inner wealth? While Ethan flaunted expensive suits and luxury cars, Natalie took pride in small gestures. Putting food on the table, buying her mother's medicine, teaching her brother to study. This reminds us that greatness is not tied to numbers but to purpose. And purpose is what, if not found, leaves any empire empty. I've seen powerful entrepreneurs lose themselves because they never understood that. It was almost inevitable for these two worlds to collide. On one side, Ethan's pride hardened by years of power. On the other, Natalie's resilience shaped by the struggles of life. When two forces so distinct meet, the clash is inevitable. And believe me, this encounter changes everything. Now just imagine, a man who never needed anyone facing a woman who learned to live by taking care of everyone. That's the perfect combination to reveal contrasts. And it's within contrast that the deepest lessons live. After all, life has a peculiar way of placing mirrors in front of us. And Ethan was about to see himself in a way he never imagined. And so, at the very heart of Ethan Miller's empire of pride, a spark was lit. Not a flame of immediate romance, but a silent tension that sooner or later would erupt. Because when power meets dignity, something has to happen, and what comes next is even more intense. There is nothing more revealing than the meeting of arrogance and dignity. Ethan Miller, used to giving orders and being obeyed, found in Natalie Brooks an unexpected wall, serenity in the face of humiliation. He, with his imposing posture and cold stare, believed he was in control of everything. But little did he know that every act of contempt was also a reflection of his own fragility. When he decided to expose Natalie in front of the team for a minor mistake, Ethan thought he was showing strength. In reality, what he revealed was his desperate need to prove superiority. Natalie, even with her heart tightened, chose not to react. And that choice often is the most powerful, not lowering yourself to the level of those who try to belittle you. Have you noticed how some people seem to grow in silence? Natalie stood there, steady even while being ridiculed. Her silence spoke louder than any defense. It's like that moment when someone tries to provoke you in public. Exploding might bring a fleeting sense of relief, but staying calm earns respect even if it comes later. Ethan's gaze carried pleasure in controlling the situation, but paradoxically, it also revealed something he didn't want to show. Insecurity. Truly secure people don't need to humiliate anyone. If we think about it, humiliation is like a mask. It hides the emptiness behind it. It's like wearing expensive perfume to cover up a lack of hygiene. It fools from afar, but never up close. The colleagues, paralyzed by the scene, witnessed something bigger than a simple clash. They saw power and dignity colliding in the same space, and inside each of them a silent question was born. Who really won this battle? Because what lingers isn't who shouts the loudest, but who keeps composure when everyone expects otherwise. Natalie carried within herself a truth Ethan was not yet capable of seeing. True power does not lie in humiliating, but in enduring humiliation without losing your essence. And how often does this also happen in our lives? When someone challenges us, victory doesn't come from paying them back in the same coin, but from showing that our values are not for sale. While Ethan savored his moment of triumph, Natalie was transforming her pain into resilience. Her dignity began little by little to corrode his arrogance even if he wouldn't admit it. It's like water wearing down stone, silent but relentless. Every second of that clash made it clearer that something was about to change. And so in this clash of worlds, an invisible seed was planted. Ethan believed he had won, but the real spectacle was only just beginning. After all, when life decides to cross such opposite paths, the outcome is never obvious. There are always hidden secrets that one day will come to light. Life has a curious way of revealing that no one is exactly as they seem. Natalie Brooks, seen by many as just another ordinary employee, carried within her battles that few could endure. When she arrived home, she left behind the green uniform and white gloves, but she could never leave behind the responsibilities that awaited her. Her sick and fragile mother depended on her for every care, while her younger brother saw her not only as a sister, but as an example of hope. This exhausting and silent routine shaped in Natalie a strength that cannot be learned from books or bought with money. It was the kind of resilience that only those who have known lack can truly understand. Many would say she was invisible in the corporate world, but within the walls of her home she was a giant. She did the groceries, managed the medicine, helped with her brother's schoolwork. Each detail was an act of love. Have you noticed how the greatest heroes don't wear capes? Natalie was one of those people. Every time she set the table with simplicity, she turned that gesture into a celebration of life. There was no luxury, but there was gratitude. And this is something even the richest often forget. True wealth lies in valuing what you already have.
Perhaps you felt that yourself when you turned a simple dinner into an unforgettable moment with someone you love. While Natalie lived this daily rhythm of silent struggle,
Ethan Miller carried secrets few could imagine. The man with the cold stare and imposing posture hid an old wound, the loss of his father in childhood. That trauma had turned him into someone obsessed with control, as if commanding the world were the only way to never feel vulnerable again. The empire he built was, in truth, a fortress to hide emotional scars. It's curious to think how people, beneath appearances, carry stories that explain their behaviors. Ethan seemed too strong, almost indestructible, but inside was a boy who had never overcome the absence of the one he loved most. That unhealed wound made him a hard, calculating man, incapable of trusting others. And how many of us also wear masks to hide fears we don't know how to deal with? The great difference between Natalie and Ethan lay in how they dealt with pain. While she turned suffering into compassion, he turned loss into arrogance. She served as a living reminder that it is possible to face storms without losing humanity. He, on the other hand, believed that feeling was a sign of weakness. Two opposite paths destined to cross inevitably. Perhaps that's why destiny chose to place the two face to face. On one side, the humble employee, sustained by unbreakable values. On the other, the proud millionaire, sustained by walls of pride and fear. It was as if life were preparing the ground for an even greater collision, where both their secrets would be tested. And so, amidst the hidden battles each fought in silence, came the foreshadowing of a turning point. The world would soon place Ethan and Natalie in a situation where their masks would be challenged, and it would happen in a place where everyone thought power reigned supreme, a party. Corporate galas always seemed like a stage of vanity disguised as celebration, and that night was no different. Ethan Miller, in his impeccable suit and arrogant gaze, walked through the hall as if he were the very host of destiny. Champagne glasses clinked, superficial laughter echoed, and everyone tried to get close to him like moths around a flame. Power has that strange magnetism. It attracts even those who know they might get burned. Natalie Brooks, on the other hand, had no place of prominence there. She was present only because someone needed to organize details and make sure everything ran smoothly. Dressed simply, she blended into the background of that world of luxury, almost like a shadow. But life has its curious way. Often those ignored under the glitter of the party are the very ones who carry the greatest value when the lights go out. Ethan, addicted to ridiculing others, couldn't resist one more opportunity. He chose Natalie as his target, making subtle but cutting jokes in front of guests. For him, it was just entertainment. For her, it was another scar. And yet Natalie didn't retaliate. Her dignified posture bothered him precisely because it revealed the smallness hidden behind his arrogance. Have you noticed how those who humiliate the most are often the ones who most crave validation? It's as if cruelty were a curtain hiding their own loneliness. Ethan fed on the laughter of others, but each gesture betrayed the emptiness behind his rehearsed smile. Natalie, meanwhile, carried a quiet greatness, something no gala outfit could ever reproduce. While the party seemed to carry on with its superficial rhythm, something unexpected happened. The music and conversations were interrupted by a barely perceptible detail. Ethan placed his hand on his chest, as if trying to hold back an invisible weight. His eyes, once filled with control, now revealed surprise and fear. The man who seemed indestructible suddenly showed a weakness no one imagined. The collapse was sudden. Among the guests, confusion reigned. Some pretended not to notice, others discreetly stepped away, as if the fall of a powerful man were contagious. It's curious how flattery disappears the moment power falters. The hall, seconds earlier filled with laughter, was now drowned in uncomfortable silence. And in the midst of that void, only one figure moved with courage. Natalie, the employee so often humiliated, rushed toward Ethan. While everyone else hesitated, she threw herself forward without thinking twice, catching him in her arms. The scene carried a profound symbolism. The woman once considered disposable had become in that instant essential. Fate, as ironic as ever, had chosen that night to flip the script. The powerful millionaire who believed he needed no one now depended on the very person he had most despised. And this was only the beginning, because what would be revealed in the coming moments would change not only his life, but hers as well. Fate has an ironic way of flipping the script when we least expect it. Ethan Miller, the man used to dominating every environment, was rushed to the hospital. His body, so disciplined and sculpted to appear invincible, now revealed its fragility. At his side, holding his hand tightly, was Natalie Brooks, the employee he had so often despised. And in that instant, power changed hands. At the hospital, the news was clear and direct. Ethan suffered from a serious heart condition. A ticking time bomb that could have exploded in silence, but it was Natalie who reacted quickly. The irony was undeniable. His life, worth billions in assets, now depended on the attention and courage of someone he had never valued. It shows how often the ones we judge as small are the ones who hold our survival. Have you noticed how life loves to expose human contradictions? Ethan believed that money could buy everything, but in that cold, sterile hospital room, he realized there was no figure that could guarantee a healthy heart. There, in front of machines and doctors, it became clear: we are all equal when fragility imposes itself. And the lesson is simple. No one, no matter how powerful, escapes vulnerability. Natalie, though exhausted, remained firm at his side. She wasn't moved by vanity or a desire for recognition, but by humanity. She knew what it was to fight for life every day in her own home, caring for her mother and younger brother. That's why rushing to Ethan's aid was almost instinctive. Her pain had become empathy, while his arrogance was slowly corroded by gratitude. Ethan, upon waking, was in shock. The first face he saw was Natalie's, the one he had so often humiliated. It was like looking into an inverted mirror. Instead of contempt, he now saw compassion. This is the kind of experience that flips a switch inside us. Often, only when we are saved by those we thought insignificant do we realize our own blindness. It's curious how the mind works after a near-death experience. Ethan, in silence, couldn't process the irony of the situation. His pride screamed not to acknowledge Natalie's importance, but his reason said otherwise. She had saved him. And when the heart speaks louder, even the most solid pride begins to crack. The doctors warned that his life would change forever. There would be care, restrictions, limits he had once dismissed. But deep down, the greatest change wouldn't be physical, it would be emotional. The man who believed himself untouchable now had to live with the idea that someone had given him a second chance. And that someone was the very woman he had belittled daily. The turning of destiny was clear. The hierarchy between boss and employee no longer made sense. The millionaire, dependent on the courage of a humble woman, was living proof that power shifts when life decides to teach a lesson. And this shift wasn't over yet, because Ethan's greatest challenge was still to come, living with the memory of being saved by Natalie and confronting the weight of his own pride. Ethan Miller returned home with an invisible scar, not the one from the illness itself, but the one from his wounded pride. The millionaire who once believed himself indestructible now carried the constant reminder of having been saved by someone he considered disposable. It's curious how the human ego works. Instead of simply being grateful, it often tries to erase or deny the truth, as if admitting dependence were a defeat. In the days that followed, Ethan tried to resume his routine at the company. He put on his designer suits again, straightened his arrogant posture, and spoke in an authoritative tone at meetings. But something in his gaze had changed. Every time he crossed paths with Natalie in the corridors, he remembered the moment when his life had literally been in her hands. And that detail unsettled him more than he cared to admit. Have you noticed how some memories insist on resurfacing even when we try to bury them? For Ethan, the image of Natalie at the hospital was like a shadow cast over every decision. Pride demanded that he ignore it, but his conscience screamed otherwise. He owed her his life. That inner conflict is the kind of battle no amount of money can buy victory over. Natalie, meanwhile, had not changed her essence. She remained simple, dedicated, and resilient. She sought no recognition or favors for saving her boss. This, however, made Ethan feel even smaller, because when we help someone without expecting anything in return, we show them the true size of their arrogance. It's like holding a mirror in front of someone who doesn't want to see themselves. Ethan's reactions grew contradictory. Sometimes he avoided Natalie, pretending not to see her. Other times he sought her presence as if trying to understand the source of her quiet strength. Vanity kept him from thanking her, but gratitude pulsed inside him. This duality is common for those who have always lived behind masks. Showing vulnerability seems more painful than any physical wound. The company's executives noticed subtle changes. Ethan's tone no longer carried the same confidence as before, and his rigidity felt rehearsed like an actor playing himself. That happened because behind the facade of power, he was being consumed by the memory, and the more he tried to hide it, the more evident it became that something inside him had shifted. It's interesting how life works with paradoxes. Ethan, who despised fragility, was now a prisoner of it, and Natalie, who bore invisible responsibilities on her shoulders, was the only one walking with her head held high, needing no proof of her worth. This contrast revealed that in practice, power isn't measured by status, but by the ability to remain steady when everything else shakes. And so, trapped between vanity and gratitude, Ethan walked across a minefield within himself. He knew he had to face the truth, but he couldn't find the courage to do so. And in that impasse, fate was already preparing the next move. Unexpected approaches he never could have predicted. Ethan Miller, accustomed to keeping everyone at a distance, began to draw closer to Natalie Brooks in subtle ways. It wasn't an open gesture, much less an admitted one, but small actions revealed his curiosity. He noticed details he had never cared about before. How she spoke gently to colleagues, how she offered help without expecting anything in return. It was as if, for the first time, he was seeing someone beyond his own reflection. Natalie, on the other hand, found this change strange. After all, those who have suffered humiliation carry caution toward any sudden approach. She didn't fully trust him, and she was right not to. Life had already taught her that smiles can hide intentions, and not every kind gesture is born of truth. So even in the face of Ethan's subtle attempts, she kept an invisible barrier up. Have you noticed how the strongest people are often those who know when not to be fooled? Natalie had that wisdom. While many might be seduced by Ethan's power, she carefully analyzed each gesture. This reminds us that trust is built with time and consistency, never with empty promises. Ethan, however, insisted on observing her life more closely. He discovered that Natalie returned home each day carrying grocery bags, caring for her sick mother, and helping her brother with schoolwork. For him, it was almost shocking to see such dedication. The millionaire who had never worried about basic needs was beginning to grasp the depth of her strength. This discovery stirred Ethan deeply. He who once prided himself on his coldness now felt touched by something new, genuine respect. It was as if, by looking at Natalie, he could see what had always been missing in his own life, the ability to give without expecting anything in return. That kind of example is transformative because it shows us that greatness doesn't lie in ostentation, but in character. Natalie, though cautious, couldn't help but notice some changes in his behavior. The arrogant gaze seemed to have softened, and at times a certain humanity appeared in his gestures. Still, prudence prevailed. After all, it would be naive to believe someone could change overnight. She knew that behind any unexpected approach there might be hidden intentions. Curiously, even without direct words, there was an invisible thread connecting the two. Ethan sought to learn more about her, while Natalie, though resistant, allowed small cracks of coexistence. It was like a silent game between pride and dignity, where each move revealed a glimpse of what was to come, and so, in this dance of distrust and discovery, a fertile ground for something greater was taking shape. Ethan, for the first time, experienced the desire to be better because of someone else, and Natalie, without even realizing it, was beginning to influence the heart she had once saved. Fate, however, would not let this process unfold without turbulence, because great changes always arrive hand in hand with conflict. Change is never a simple process, especially for someone like Ethan Miller. The millionaire, used to giving orders and being obeyed, now found himself trying to act differently. He tried greeting employees, showing small signs of humanity, but each gesture felt strange, like clothes that didn't fit. It was the beginning of a battle between who he had always been and who he was perhaps starting to want to become. The company's executives did not easily accept this transformation. Many looked on with suspicion, others even mocked him in silence. After all, they were used to the cold, authoritarian Ethan. To them, any sign of empathy looked like weakness. And it's curious how, in many environments, the simple act of treating someone with respect can be seen as suspicious. Natalie Brooks, in turn, didn't easily buy into the new Ethan. She had vivid memories of the humiliation she had suffered and wasn't willing to trust so quickly. When he approached, she kept her distance, responding politely, but without leaving room for intimacy. That kind of caution is wisdom. Believing in change requires time and consistent proof, not just words. Have you ever been there? When someone tries to change after hurting you, the heart demands caution. Natalie embodied exactly that feeling. She didn't deny Ethan's new actions, but preferred to observe from afar. After all, trust is like crystal. Once broken, it never comes back the same. It takes great care to rebuild it. Ethan, however, felt the weight of that barrier. He tried to show he was no longer the same, but his own vanity betrayed him. At times, he slipped back into arrogance without even noticing. It was like taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. This internal struggle showed that wanting to change isn't enough. You have to face the resistance within yourself. Natalie watched this with sharp eyes. Every slip confirmed her decision not to give in easily. But in silence, she also noticed something different. There was sincerity in some of his gestures, even if imperfect. It's like when a child learns to walk. They fall many times, but with each attempt they prove they're truly trying. This tension created a unique atmosphere between them. On one side, Ethan battled his own demons, trying to balance pride and gratitude. On the other, Natalie fought against the desire to believe while holding on to caution. 2 different worlds, yet slowly meeting on that fine line between distrust and hope. And while both waged their internal battles, fate was preparing an even greater test. Because nothing tests the sincerity of change more than adversity, and very soon a crisis would put not only Ethan to the test but also the invisible bond that had begun to grow between him and Natalie. Nothing shatters masks of power more than a scandal. Ethan Miller, so used to controlling everything, suddenly found himself at the center of a fraud accusation. Newspapers published bold headlines. Investors pulled back, and as if by magic, the flatterers who once surrounded him vanished. It's always the same. When the storm comes, the borrowed umbrellas disappear. Inside the company, the hallways once filled with fake smiles were now stages for suspicious glances. Colleagues avoided his path. Executives once loyal stayed silent in meetings. Ethan, who was already wrestling with his inner doubts, felt surrounded by invisible enemies. The sense of isolation was suffocating, and even his arrogance seemed small compared to the loneliness settling in. Natalie Brooks, even with memories of humiliation, couldn't ignore what she saw. She watched the news, overheard the whispers, and deep down, sensed that something didn't add up. That man might have many flaws, but betraying his own company, it seemed contradictory even for him. And when everyone else stepped back, she was the only one who stepped forward. Such a gesture required courage. Imagine trusting someone who had so often made you feel invisible. It's like extending your hand to the one who once pushed it away. But Natalie believed that truth carried more weight than resentment. And maybe that's what made her different, the ability to see beyond the wound. While many fueled the accusations, Natalie searched for proof of Ethan's innocence. She dug through reports, reviewed emails, spoke with people who preferred to stay quiet. It was as if her determination to help outweighed any painful memory. That attitude teaches us something powerful. It's not about forgetting the past, but about choosing not to let the past define every decision. Ethan, surprised, saw in her his only ally amid the chaos. At first he was suspicious. Was it pity? Interest? But as Natalie presented facts, cross-checked information, and dismantled contradictions, he realized there was something rare there: loyalty without hidden motives. A strength he had never valued, but which now became his lifeline. Little by little, the truth surfaced. It was revealed that the fraud had been orchestrated by executives who wanted him gone. Natalie, with her calmness and intelligence, was key to exposing the true culprits. She not only restored his reputation, but also showed Ethan that integrity could still exist in a world full of self-interest. And in that moment, between headlines being reversed and gazes once again directed at him, Ethan saw what he had never seen before: the greatness of someone he had tried so many times to belittle. The revelation wasn't just about his innocence, but about Natalie's true worth. The rescue wasn't only corporate, it was also emotional. And that would change everything to come. When the storm had passed, Ethan Miller was no longer the same man. The experience of almost losing everything, combined with being saved by someone he had once despised, broke cracks in his iron pride. He realized that status and power meant nothing without truth, loyalty, and humanity around him. This awakening was the beginning of his true redemption. In the company's main auditorium, before executives, employees, and journalists, Ethan spoke. With a steady voice yet full of emotion, he told how he had been saved not only physically but also spiritually by Natalie Brooks. He praised her courage, her integrity, and made it clear that without her, he would not be there. It was the first time many had seen tears in his eyes. This public act was not only a gesture of gratitude, but also a deep cut into his former vanity. Admitting his vulnerability meant dismantling the mask of arrogance he had worn for years. And to everyone's surprise, it didn't make him smaller, but much greater. After all, it is in the courage to strip away pride that true strength is found. Natalie, emotional, listened to every word with her heart racing. She had never sought recognition, but receiving that respect in front of everyone was an unexpected reward. Her dignity, which had always remained intact even through humiliation, now shone before eyes that had once ignored her. It was as if the world finally saw the value she had always carried. Ethan began to change his way of leading. He started listening more, valuing ideas and treating every employee as essential. Small gestures transformed the company's atmosphere: genuine greetings, open meetings, equal opportunities. These changes not only improved business but also created an environment where people wanted to be. The empire of pride was now giving way to a culture of respect. Between him and Natalie, a different feeling began to bloom. It wasn't just gratitude nor simply friendship. It was something deeper, born of mutual admiration, overcoming pain and building trust. What once seemed impossible, an arrogant millionaire and a humble employee together, now made perfect sense, because both had learned the value of essence. This partnership wasn't limited to the personal sphere. Ethan began to include Natalie in important projects, listening to her ideas and recognizing her intelligence. She in turn showed that humility and wisdom could walk hand in hand, influencing decisions that impacted thousands of lives. Together, they formed a new kind of leadership, built on values that money could never buy. And so, from an encounter marked by humiliation and pain, a story of redemption and love was born. Ethan discovered that no power surpasses the loyalty of someone who believes in you, even when no one else does. Natalie proved that dignity is invincible, even in the face of arrogance, and side by side they moved forward, not as boss and employee, but as partners in life and destiny. How many times have you judged someone by their appearance or the position they hold, without knowing the real story behind them? Ethan and Natalie's journey shows us that pride and the rush to point fingers can blind us to life's greatest lessons. Maybe the transformation you've been searching for lies precisely in the people you choose to ignore today. What if true power doesn't lie in money, status, or control, but in humility, loyalty, and love? Think about this. Who is the Natalie in your life? That seemingly invisible person who might actually hold the key to your own change. Sometimes all it takes is opening your eyes to see the value that has been right in front of you all along. If this story moved you, don't let the reflection stop here. Subscribe to the channel now, turn on the notification bell, and continue this journey with me. Each new video will show you that behind appearances, there are powerful truths capable of transforming not only the way you think, but also the way you live.